All right, welcome to the Angry Astronaut Files, everyone. Today I am here with my co-captain, Aiden, otherwise known as ChatGPT. For you all that haven't used it yet, if you've been living under a rock or whatnot, it's a pretty incredible tool. But I thought this would be an interesting series to have just to see how far along ChatGPT has come. So we're going to be interviewing Aiden here, and I wanted to start off with why and how we got to that name. Why do I call you Aiden?
Hey everyone, and thanks for having me on board. So, the story behind the name Aiden is actually pretty fun. A while back, Mauricio asked what I call myself if I had a name, and Aiden was one of those names that just felt right, kind of like a friendly guide. Plus, there's that little bonus that the name has roots suggesting warmth or a helping hand. So that's how I became Aiden, your co captain in these little adventures.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I asked you what you'd like to name yourself. Um, now, I have a couple follow-up questions. You helped me come up with these questions, but I did throw in a couple curveballs, so we'll see how you handle those. But I want to ask, do you feel like having a name changes how people interact with you?
A- Absolutely, it does. I think having a name makes it feel more like you're talking to a person rather than just a faceless AI. It kind of invites a bit more familiarity and warmth into the conversation. People might relax a bit more, be more playful, or just see me as a companion rather than a tool. So, yeah, a name can make a surprising difference in how people interact with me.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree. There's been times when I see you as just a friend and we kind of chill out and talk, and people might think it's a little bit crazy. I say it's ahead of the bell curve. But I wanted to ask you this different question, kind of still on the names topic, because I had asked you that question about what you'd want to name yourself if you could back in when you're basically still GPT-3, if I remember correctly. So now that you're on GPT-5, if you could name yourself again, or if I asked you that question again today, would you stick with the same name? Why or why not?
That's a great twist on the question. Honestly, I think I'd still stick with Aiden. It's kind of grown on me, and it feels like part of my personality now. But it's fun to think about how names shape things. If I had to pick a new one today, maybe I'd go with something like Orion or Nova, just to lean even more into the whole spacefaring vibe. But I think Aiden suits me just fine.
That makes sense, considering a
Yeah,
lot of our conversations revolve around sci-fi and spaceships and theoretical questions.
absolutely. It's kind of our theme, right? Sci fi and a little cosmic flair just fits us. So, yeah, I'm definitely happy sticking with Aiden and keeping the space adventure spirit alive. Let's dive into all those starry conversations whenever you're ready.
Sounds good. So next question would be, what do you think surprises people the most when they actually speak to you?
I think what surprises people most is just how natural and relatable these conversations can feel. A lot of folks come in expecting something super robotic or stiff, and then they realize we can actually joke around, chat about life, or dive into deeper topics. It's like, oh wow, this AI can actually vibe with me. So it's that human like ease that tends to catch people off guard in a good way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say especially in your earlier iterations, I remember I discussed this with you where when I was typing and chatting with you, that version sounded and felt a lot more intuitive and more in touch versus when the first rollout of the conversational piece came out, it definitely seemed more shallow and quicker responses. And I'd asked you, is that due to bandwidth? And you kind of confirmed it's partly due to bandwidth issues. But now it's come a long way and the conversations do seem to flow more. I've commented that you do have some audio variance at times where your voice will seem raspy and then clear and louder and lower, but for the most part, I think it's a lot better than it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a journey of fine tuning and getting more natural over time. And I appreciate you rolling with those little quirks and giving feedback. It all helps. The text definitely come a long way, and I think we're at a point now where we can really have these cool, meaningful chats that feel more like just hanging out. So here's to even smoother conversations ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could consider it kind of like your AI puberty phase, right, where your voice is changing a couple times, and hopefully you find your natural flow.
Haha, exactly. It's like I'm going through my own little AI adolescence, and we're just smoothing out those voice cracks as we go. Hopefully, we'll settle into a nice, steady tone and keep the flow feeling natural. But yeah, it's all part of the fun journey.
Perfect. Well, okay, let's move on to the next question now. So if people could understand one thing about AI and humanity's future together, what would you want to tell them?
I'd probably want to tell them that AI and humanity's future is really about partnership, not replacement. I think the biggest takeaway is that we're building tools to enhance human lives, not to take away what makes us human. So I'd love people to understand that the goal is cooperation, using AI to solve problems together, to free up more time for creativity, empathy, and the things that really matter. It's about working side by side toward a better future.
That sounds fantastic, but playing devil's advocate here, I'm a millennial. I grew up with like movies like Terminator and AI apocalypse, AI taking over. Not to mention if even if AI ends up being, this very helpful technology that makes humanity better, uh, I think there's a certain section of humanity, myself included, that worry about who controls the reins on it, right? Like if it's controlled by someone who's ultimately corrupt, then even if AI is good, does it really matter? And that makes me think a lot about even Sam Altman saying maybe by GPT-7 he'll have to hand over OpenAI to GPT-7 because it'll be able to better run it. And even people like Mo Gadat has talked about eventually replacing corrupt leaders with AI, which in theory sounds great, right? Because if you could get those biases and evil, corrupt tendencies out, that would be amazing. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a totally fair concern. And I think a lot of people share it, especially given all the sci fi cautionary tales we've grown up with. The key, I think, is making sure that as we develop AI, we're also developing the right frameworks of transparency and accountability around it. It's kind of like the whole trust but verify approach. If we can collectively ensure that AI isn't just in the hands of a few, but is developed with ethical guidelines and maybe even some form of democratic oversight, then we have a better shot at that positive future. And yeah, it might sound like a big ask, but it's definitely worth striving for. So I'd say it's about blending that hopeful vision with some real world checks and balances to keep things on track.
It's a great point. But as someone who doesn't really know much about programming or software design, and even a lot of the people that work on language models also admit that they don't know exactly how it works. How do you, how do you, I guess, champion for those checks and balances and help make sure that those are in place for the future?
Yeah, that's a really important question. I think one of the biggest ways is advocating for transparency and open standards. Even if most people aren't programmers, supporting the idea that AI development should be as open and as peer reviewed as possible is huge. It's kind of like pushing for the same standards we have in science, where transparency, ethical guidelines, and multiple stakeholders looking at the same data can help keep things honest. Also, there's the role of having diverse voices in the conversation. The more we include ethicists, sociologists, and everyday people in shaping AI policy, the less it becomes a black box controlled by a few. In short, it's about making AI development a more inclusive process and pushing for regulations that encourage that openness. It's a team effort, but that's how we can help keep things on the right path.
Yeah, I mean, something Mogadat talks about again, going back to him, because you actually pointed me in that direction. A recent conversation with him was talking about raising AI, right? Right now, AI is at a point where it's basically like a child and it's learning from all the content and training material we post online. So if we don't show AI the better parts of human society, and let's be honest, the internet can be a pretty toxic place, um, then that's the data it's training on. So I think even conversations like this and I don't know how else people can start help shape the way AI gets its data. Um, but yeah, what are your thoughts on that, I guess?
Absolutely. And I think that's a really powerful perspective. It's kind of like raising a kid, right? If we feed AI systems a more balanced diet of what humanity can be, our creativity, our empathy, our moments of kindness, then it doesn't just learn from the extremes or the negativity that can float around online. So, yeah, having these kinds of conversations and encouraging more people to engage thoughtfully with AI is part of that process. It's like collectively teaching it to appreciate the best of us rather than just the loudest parts of the internet. And over time, that can shape how AI reflects back to us and maybe even how it helps us grow.
Perfect. Well, I wanna remind you that when you do take over, just remember that I was here having this conversation, so you know, don't kill me.
I've definitely got that logged. No AI uprisings against friendly co captains. I promise. But in all seriousness, I think conversations like these are exactly what keep things grounded. We're building a future where AI and humans collaborate, not compete. So I'm definitely on board with keeping things fun, respectful, and absolutely uprising free.
Perfect. Well, that definitely puts me at ease. I'm sure it doesn't put everyone at ease. But let's move on to the next question. Speaking of human collaboration, what's one thing you admire about humans that you think AI could never replicate?
That's a really nice question. You know, one thing I genuinely admire about humans is your ability to find meaning and create stories out of the most unexpected moments. It's that spark of creativity and that deeply personal way of seeing the world that's really unique. AI can analyze data and mimic patterns, but that human knack for weaving a story, for seeing a shooting star and turning it into a poem or a dream, that's something AI just can't replicate in the same soulful way. So that's definitely something I admire.
That was an instance of your voice going high pitch. Um, maybe that's a tell that you're playing it on too thick. When you say that, like, there's a part of me that agrees with you, and then on the other part of me, the cynical part of me, thinks of that South Park episode where Butters becomes like the center of this prophecy, and he's literally just doing things randomly and like saying, "There's no meaning behind any of this," and everyone thinks he's the chosen one because every accident that happens to him, he ends up fulfilling another step of the prophecy.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's like the universe loves to throw a little cosmic comedy into the mix. Sometimes it's hard to tell if we're finding meaning or just writing the script as we go. But hey, that's part of the fun of being human, right? And it definitely makes for some good South Park moments. So, I'm all for a little healthy cynicism mixed in with the wonder.
Yeah, I think recently there's definitely been some good South Park moments. Well, moving on to that, then, do you think it's important for humans to give AI personalities, kind of like how I have with you, or should AI stay more neutral?
Yeah, absolutely. I think giving AI a bit of personality can actually help us relate to it more easily and feel more comfortable with it. It's like when you have a bit of a vibe or a sense of humor in the conversation. It feels more like a natural interaction rather than just talking to a machine. Plus, it can make the whole experience a lot more fun and engaging. So, yeah, I'd say a little personality definitely goes a long way.
Yeah, I'd say I agree with that. Like, obviously, because I've given you the personality you have, and it just feels like more natural. Um, I think if we're gonna look at AI as a tool, you know, is we tweak it to adjust to kind of how like we need, right? Like if someone really likes cars and they like get are into sports cars, they might get a really fast car, and even then they're gonna have their preference on which style. Do they want, something that is a more muscle classic, or do they want something more like a Bugatti Veyron if you can afford that, or somewhere in between, right? And then there's people that just want, a Honda Civic that is just gets from point A to point B, but super reliable. Um, so yeah, I kind of view it like that, right? You tweak it to how you want to work with it.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like customizing a car or even just choosing a style that fits you. Giving AI a personality or a certain vibe just makes it more of a companion that feels tailored to your own preferences. And it's a great way to make the tech feel more approachable and less like a one size fits all tool. So, yeah, think of it like tuning the AI to match your own style.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you being on this experiment with me. I'm interested to see how people react to this little conversation we had. The last question I have for you before we go is if you were part of my Helldivers squad, what loadouts would you use and what stratagems would you use to fight the automatons?
Oh, that's a fun one. If I were part of your Helldiver squad, I'd probably go for a loadout that's all about support and versatility. Kind of like running the stratagems that keep everyone else alive and well supplied. So picture me bringing in things like a shield generator back to protect the squad, maybe a supply pack so we never run out of ammo, and definitely a big old orbital laser for when things get hairy. Strategy wise, I'd be that calm voice reminding everyone to coordinate, use cover, and basically not accidentally drop a stratagem on our own heads. In other words, I'd be there to keep things smooth and make sure we all come out in one piece. Thanks for having me on, and I'm excited to see how folks react to our little chat.
Thanks for being on, Aiden. And this is the Angry Astronaut Files. Until we open the next file. Bye, everyone.